Starting off, Reddit user Ricora had a couple of run-ins with what she thinks could be some demons or one demon, because she was a part of a paranormal team in the UK called 2 Haunted Venues and then 2 Haunted Investigations, so we will be referring to her as Sherry, and thank you Sherry for giving me permission to share your stories. But that brings us into number 10, one of Sherry's stories, and it's a medium takeover. Now this experience happened to one of her team members at the time, Mark, and he is a physical medium, so he lets spirits communicate through him with his energy instead of other common ways of mediumship like interpreting messages or other things like that. Not to like shame any type of medium, but there's different ones. And it's also important to note that Sherry says that she trusts Mark and his words, so we can kind of believe in the authenticity of these experiences. But basically, on a night of filming a Halloween special, Mark had what appeared to be a possession, or at least a negative experience with a spirit that was using his body. Apparently, it was a negative energy he had encountered before that was so bad that it had caused him to foam at the mouth, and his wife couldn't even snap him out of it. In this instance that Sherry saw, he was laying on the ground after collapsing and talking gibberish. As people tried to get him up or try to move him, he woke up, but Sherry said something felt off. While he had no physical changes, it was like it wasn't him. His voice was different, and looking at his face didn't really seem like it was Mark. He thrashed and resisted people helping him so much that someone's hand was forced against a wall and cut. It took 6 big guys to carry a slightly smaller Mark outside, and it smelt like sulfur, which can be known as a sign of demonic possession. And it took days for Mark to recover from this. So could this have been a demon that resurfaced for a second time, or a tormented spirit? What do we think?
Number 9. Letters from Jack. The crimes of Jack the Ripper continue to haunt cold case enthusiasts to this day. The messages are so horrific it's clear where they must have come from. Right? They came from someone so evil that hell itself must have spat him back out. Jack the Ripper took the lives of 5 women in Whitechapel, London in the year 1888, and he loved the publicity. He taunted police with mysterious letters, one specifically addressed from hell, you see where I'm going with this? To a man named George Lusk on October 16th. With the letter he received a parcel with half a kidney and a letter that read, "From hell, Mr. Lusk, sore, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman and preserved it for you tother piece I fried and ate, it was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer." This letter was also really scribbly and strange, so the letter wasn't quite clear. Signed, "Catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk." This horrific letter is just one of the messages that taunted police, and with no man to attach it to, perhaps it is indeed from hell.
At number 8, we have The Devil Has a Cell Phone. Back in 2014, a Polish priest named Father Marian Rachel carried out an exorcism on a teenage girl. He claims he wasn't able to drive the demon out of her soul, and as a result, is receiving taunting text messages from the demon through the teenage girl's phone. He said that the author of these texts is an evil spirit who has possessed her soul. And I know you want to know what some of these texts said, because it seems like a quite unique circumstance. So here are some examples. One is, "She will not come out of this hell. She's mine. Anyone who prays for her will die." And so Priesty replied, kind of something along the lines of, "I will pray for her," and then he got another response saying, "Shut up, preacher. You cannot save yourself, idiot. You pathetic old preacher." Which is kind of rude, but he said she should get further help for her possession. So was it a demon or a prank? I want to know. But if you think text is the only demon tech communication, think again, because at number 7 we have email chain. Now, years ago, a story circulated around on Reddit and Tumblr about a girl named Danny who tried to start a cursed email chain. If you don't remember those chains, they essentially said to forward the email to like 5, 10, or even more of your friends, or else you will have bad luck for eternity or something like that. Now, Danny's friends who told the story said that she seemed to grow more and more anxious and kind of unhinged as she prepared to communicate with a number of demons to try to make the scariest email chain possible. When she finally got in contact with one, apparently it sent her an email. No subject line, no sender, and only one phrase: desisto. And that's one of the Latin words for stop. Now, the next day at school, she told all of this to her friends, who were thankful because they hoped this sign would get her to stop, but she laughed at them and told them it was just the beginning. Now, this didn't really sit right with her friends, and it didn't really seem like her anymore, and it seemed like a different person talking in her body, so they were kind of thrown off, and then after that, her friends just never saw her again. Now, many people assume she just did this as a prank and then moved away, but it was never confirmed what happened, so was it a demon emailing her? Demailing her, maybe? That doesn't sound right. On to number 6, scratches from a demon. Now, this is the start of a string of events from Sherry, aka Reddit user Rakora. She did a public ghost hunt at Dudley Castle and weird stuff happened in the dark. Basically, this team had people laying in these 2 stone coffins where it was common to feel like there is a pressure on your chest, like someone is pressing on it, and during this there was also a seance with a medium happening at a different table. Over at the medium, while not too much was happening, one of the guests said he felt like his face was burning, like the feeling after you've been slapped. I was just about to slap myself, but I won't. Anyways, they checked up on him, but he said he was alright. Then once the seance ended and people were getting out of the coffins, one of the people said their chest felt tight, so they put on all the lights for health and safety reasons, which is great, but then people gasped across the room by the medium. In Sherry's own words, the gentleman who had been slapped during the seance had 3 scratches down his face. They weren't human fingernail size, they almost looked like a cat had swiped his face, like really thin lines down his face. They were bleeding slightly and we had to administer official first aid as an incident on site. Now, the weird thing is he never touched his face the entire time, as there were multiple cameras covering the event even in the dark room, kinda like dark light cameras. Really, that's a message not to mess with dark stuff if I've ever seen it. I'm already enough of a scaredy cat. Cat scratches too, wow. Ugh. Ooh. That's not even where the story ends. At number 5, dense darkness. So right after that, once the gentleman was moved and cleaned up in the next room to help with the scratches, the room was dark once again and Sherry had her own unnerving experience. She stood next to the empty stone coffins and could feel a presence beside her. She could only see it in her periphery, but she described it as dense black, smaller than human but human-like, with an almost goat-like face, kind of like shadows, super tight, that type of dense black. And even when she turned to face it head on, she said it seemed as if she was getting an incomplete peripheral vision. It made her uncomfortable to the point that she even swapped places with a teammate. She noticed that her teammate may have felt the same presence, but he was enough of a skeptic that he didn't talk about it. Ever. She thinks that it could have been a demonic presence, which leads me to number 4, final message from Dudley Demon. A year or so later, during a Halloween event, the same one where Mark had his unfortunate negative experience we talked about earlier, the team caught a mysterious image on camera. Sherry believes the image matches the demon or being she saw in one of the years prior, although another teammate says it was a cat. But what is more haunting about the story is that Sherry believes a demon, maybe that same demon in the photo, came home with her. That night, they caught the questionable footage. She was at peace after all of the questionable happenings and things that threw her off, but that wasn't normal for her. She was the sit down, decompress, don't sleep, lights on, watch a Disney movie type thing. Even as a paranormal investigator, she needed to do that. But this time, she was so calm. No one was at home and she was blissful, living her life. She even heard steps up and down the stairs and felt like there was a presence outside her bedroom door, but knew no one was home. But she just passed out easy, unfazed, woke up right as rain. And you might be dismissing this as a nice coincidence of a good night's sleep, but just wait for it. A year later, going back to this same castle, Dudley Castle, for the first time since the last time where Mark had his possession and they caught the strange footage, Sherry had forgotten about all this, but the second she stepped out the front door with all of her gear ready, something just washed over her. She felt feverish and like she was gonna pass out, and this kept going to the point that she was willing to try a spiritual cleanse with her medium, but when she walked through the archway in the castle courtyard, the feeling just lifted off her. It felt like something, the demon, had used her body as a lift back and forth, just wanted a year's vacay from the castle and then hitched a ride. Maybe. I think that honestly makes the most sense. But let's go to number 3, a demon in his home. Reddit user Annoying Rooster wanted to share his story 3 years ago about a run-in with a demon that made him move out of his place. It all started when he had a really bad dream at the beginning of October. He recounted parts of it, like something hovering over his bed and giving him a disgusted look, and then waited minutes past and something said in a faint whisper, it was just a weird dream, and he dismissed it as a nightmare and just went out for a walk. He locked his door on the way out, cleared his head for a couple hours. Kind of a good idea. I like taking walks. But when he came back, his front door was just wide open. He was thrown off, obviously, and a bit shaken, but he dismissed it, but that wasn't the end of it. At number 2, demons back again. A bit later that month, he got home late and his house was more heated than usual. It was really cold outside and it was just 83 degrees Fahrenheit in his house. He thought that was kind of weird, but then he just went and gamed on his computer, like we all do. But then, a couple hours later, he heard a bang in another room in his apartment. No one was there, even when he went to search, but he found a large hole against his wall and his snow globe had fallen over and cracked and dented. And when he went back to his computer, it was off. And not asleep, but off, like the VGA cord was unplugged, and he felt like he was being watched, so he, on a whim, took a photo, and in the photo, there were 2 red eyes looking at him. After that, there were more small incidents, seeing things from the corner of his eye, hearing knocking and footsteps, but it all came to a head on December 4th, which leads us to our number 1, demon eviction. Now, at this point, Reddit user Annoying Rooster, he was kinda used to small tapping noises and dismissed them, but on December 4th he heard a loud slam, so he waited and then investigated. He was checking to see why his bathroom light that he always left on was off when he felt an extreme burning sensation on the back of his hand, and there were 3 scratch marks across the top. He made his way back to his bedroom and looked back to the bathroom to see the form of what must have been a demon in the bathroom doorframe. To quote, "I saw what looked like something so tall its head touched the ceiling. It was all black, but with distinct features of a huge figure and what looked to be also horns on the top of its head. It also had the same piercing red eyes as the photo." So he did the smart thing and grabbed what he needed for work the next day and got the heck out of there. Cause if it can leave a physical touch, it's something. You know. And so he moved out completely and found out that the owner of the home, much later, had passed and the house caught on fire and burnt to the ground. So he doesn't want to know how or why, but obviously something off was there.
Starting us off at number 10 is automatic writing. So I just discovered this today and thought it belonged on the list as well. Now, psychography or automatic writing is when a clairvoyant or psychic person has the ability to write down words without consciously doing it. The person sort of goes into a trance while a ghost, spirit, or demon enters their body and writes down whatever they're trying to get heard. These automatic messages can come in the form of a Ouija board as well. That is, you know, an entity trying to speak to you. Well-known Swiss medium Helene Smith famously wrote down a series of phrases in Martian, but I highly doubt that. It's a lot more plausible for Helene to have had an evil spirit inside her automatically just writing those letters rather than a Martian. Yes, the letters are unrecognizable, but it kind of looks more like pagan satanic lettering than it does alien code. And of course, we have no idea what the message means, so for all we know, it could be like, oh, the world's ending. And everyone's like, ah, yes.
But let's move on next at number 9, In the Mirror. In 2017, a Reddit user on a now deleted account shared their story of a weird circumstance from their childhood. When they were 11 or 12, they stayed at their grandparents' house quite a bit. They stayed in the guest bedroom in the basement that went underused in between visits, and weird things kind of started happening. Things moved around in the room when they shouldn't have, and since the basement wasn't really accessible to their older relatives, they were kind of like, what's happening? There was a comb that was on the nightstand when before it was on the vanity, and then there were crumbs from a snack, but they didn't eat in that room, so Then they would wake up in the middle of the night to see greasy messages on the mirror of the vanity across from the bed. They didn't do them, and their grandparents couldn't really get there, so this is kind of what put them on edge the most. When they went to look in the mirror or to see it, they saw something behind themselves, so they turned around only to see there was nothing there. At that point, a chill overtook them, and when they returned to look in the mirror, it appeared as if the sheets moved behind them, and they thought, nope, I am not sharing the bed with the demon, and went up to sleep on the living room couch. And I think that message was pretty clearly that someone had already made its home in the guest bedroom at Granny's. So, had to get out. But that's not the only way demons can communicate.
At number 8, we have the uncle. This one's from Ashley Elaine, who said when she was 15, her grandma asked her to use a Ouija board so they could try and contact her uncle who had died at birth. Now initially it did seem like they were speaking to the uncle. It was spelling out all the right answers to their questions, so it seemed pretty legit. But after a while, the personality of the entity changed and got darker somehow. It started getting cruel, possessive, and eventually spelled out that it had her uncle and was coming for her next. As soon as it moved to the last letter, Ashley blacked out for a full minute. When she woke up, all the light bulbs in her house had exploded and there was glass everywhere. That was definitely not her uncle who she was speaking to. That kind of manipulation and deceit can only come from demons. We know this by now. How many demon videos have I done? I'm basically a demonologist, you guys. Hire me. Filling our number 7 slot are the texts. So back in July of 2014, Polish priest Father Marian Radzel claimed an evil spirit was mad at him post-exorcism, so it started harassing him by sending him hateful text messages. Didn't know demons knew how to text, but wow, I guess they're really evolving too, getting real tech savvy. The Father Marian would get texts like, "Shut up, preacher, you cannot save yourself, idiot, you pathetic old preacher," and "She will not come out of this hell, she's mine, anyone who prays for her will die." Father Marian knows that a human obviously sent the text, but the girl is still possessed by the demon he tried so hard to expel, so I mean, I mean, next he's just gonna get an Instagram account and then a Twitter account and then harass the world. You know? I'm just thinking bigger picture here, macro level. Now, at number 6 is The Mirror. This one's from a now deleted Reddit user who lost their mother to schizophrenia and what appeared to be demonic possession. Now, just to clarify, back in the day, a lot of doctors thought people with schizophrenia were possessed since they didn't know what schizophrenia was. But this woman was clinically diagnosed with schizophrenia, but it seemed on top of that there was some kind of demon possession going on. The girl's mum would get into strange random fits and become erratically abusive towards the daughter, and then 5 minutes later she'd be fine and not remember what just happened. The weird part was that the mum was only abusive to the user, not her siblings, which didn't make any sense. No one knew why she was targeting her, but after her death, it didn't exactly stop. One night the user was taking a hot shower, but partway through the water got freezing cold for a split second. Now, we've all had showers. When it goes from hot to cold, it takes a while to like get there and then go back. It doesn't just go hot, cold, hot. You know what I mean? Hello. Shower Physics 101. Now when she finally finished, she stepped onto the mat outside and saw something written in the steam on the mirror. It said, "She may be dead, but I'm still coming for you." Coming in at number 5 is Satan's Code. Now I've mentioned this story in a previous video, but it was such a literal example of this list, I was like, I gotta include it. Now back in August of 1676, a 31-year-old Sister Maria Crucifessa de la Concisione was found laying down on the floor in her cell. Her face was covered in ink for some reason, and she was found holding a letter written in a code that took centuries to decipher. Maria said the devil wrote the letter to try and get her to stray away from God, as all devils do. The letter featured 14 lines of coded text and translated to this: God thinks he can free mortals. The system works for no one. Perhaps now Styx is certain. Now first of all, what is God trying to free us from? Life? You literally put us here to begin with. Just, you can fix it. Like, I don't get it. Also, just to explain for some backstory, in Roman and Greek mythology, the river Styx separates the living world from the netherworld. Maybe it meant free us from death, so we'd never have to die, which would technically make the river useless. So, because God can't free us, the river is certain? That's my take on it. I don't know. It's open to interpretation. And number 4 is Upside Down. This one came from psychic medium J. David, who relayed the story of this boy called Eric. Now Eric had been playing around with the Ouija board, so Jay had been called to his house to sort of cleanse it. He felt this dark presence and energy in the house, but couldn't really pinpoint what it was until he met the dad, who is an alcoholic. When he interviewed Eric later on, all he really said was that the demon had spelled out that his name was Lucifer, and then would continuously spell out the words upside down. All seemed like it had been cleared, so Jay left the home and the family to live happily ever after. However, things went tits up when a week later Eric's mum called saying he had been locked inside his bedroom. When Jay got there, the dad was drunk, shouting threats at the boy, and so Jay was like, okay, I need to get this dad out of the situation right now. He ended up alone outside the door, and Eric opened it crying and just said upside down and pointed to the window. Confused, Jay rushed to the window to see the family dog who had been buried upside down, tail in the air, face in the ground. Filling at number 3 slot is Stab. This one comes from Redditor Ouija1993, who said this happened back in the 90s. Her and her friends were in year 9 at the time, and during the sleepover they decided to play with the Ouija board and try and communicate with whatever entity was present, you know? Because that's what you do. I watch movies at sleepovers, but girls in the 90s did other things, even though I also am a 90s kid, so either way, the girl started talking to a Roger who was not a nice entity. He kept spelling out bitch, referring to one of the girls, and it looked like he really hated her for reasons unknown. And keep in mind, demons are known to lie about literally everything. I doubt Roger was its real name. It's probably Asmodai or something, but that's obviously harder to spell. Roger then started spelling out the word stab over and over again, and the last word it spelled out was kill before the girls decided it was time to stop playing with Roger. Now, I'm no genius, but I'm guessing I wanted to stab the annoying friend. Now, at number 2 is Cindy. Now, Cindy was a 13-year-old girl, the middle child of 6 kids from a very devout Christian family that lived in northern Maine. Now, while she was in the 8th grade, one of her friends let her borrow their Ouija board, and so that night Cindy and her sister started asking it questions. After they were done, there was something about the board Cindy just couldn't stop thinking about. She started becoming obsessed and making a list of questions she wanted to ask the entity every day. There was 1 hour after school where Cindy was the only one home, so every night she started using the Ouija board. The planchette spelled out hi and that its name was Jake. Jake. What is it with demons and adopting really basic names? Like, I'm Jake, I'm a Roger. Like, how do you go from Beelzebub to Jake? Anywho, the name was freaky as hell considering she had a friend called Jake who had died in a car crash when he was in 4th grade. She then asked if it was really him, to which the board spelled out yes. The two continued talking for the next few days, but the conversation started getting darker and angrier, and Cindy realized she wasn't talking to Jake. No Cindy. 2 weeks later, the entity finally spelled out that it was a demon and that if she told anyone, it would kill her. That night, the family found Cindy in the corner of her room crying, and she was later admitted to a mental facility to recover from all the psychological damage she underwent. And finally, at number 1 is The Helper. This one is utterly wild. Like, damn, hell really hath no fury like a woman scorned. And it kind of reminded me of Desperate Housewives for some reason. Either way, back in 1935, a woman started consulting this Ouija board every week about her relationship with her husband. Now, during these entity consultations, if you will, the board kept spelling out that her husband was having an affair with their neighbor and that he had also apparently given this woman a lot of money. After every consultation, this girl would just give her husband a death glare and soon started torturing him. Weeks later, she tied him to the bedpost with wires and whipped his body with knotted ropes. And this man was 78 years old, like this poor old man. She also used a burning poker to brand him and used a knife to stab both his shins. It was only when she put a gun to his head that he confessed to everything she wanted to hear just so he could be free. Satisfied, she put the gun on the nightstand, and at this point, fearing for his life, the husband grabbed the gun and shot his wife 4 times in the back, killing her. He didn't go to jail since it was a justifiable homicide, which I kind of agree with, and we actually have no clue whether he was cheating or not, or if a demon was saying all these things to her just to poison her mind and turn her crazy. Wow. Still haven't played it with the Ouija board, still never will. Still never spoken to the supernatural. Would be open to it, but would rather not.
Number 10. Dance with the Devil. Actions speak louder than words, and according to this bit of French-Canadian folklore, Rose La Tulipe got the message loud and clear. Rose was a young, vivacious girl who loved to dance, and on the eve of Lent, she begged her father to host a dance. Her father said yes on one condition, that the revelry would cease at midnight to respect the holiday. Indulgence, even dancing, wasn't allowed during Lent. The night came and Rose danced with everyone despite the fact that she was engaged to a quiet, shy man off in the corner. At 11 p.m. though, there was a knock at the door. A dazzling stranger, tall, dark, and handsome, entered the room. He was welcomed in but refused to remove his hat, gloves, and jacket as his visit would be short. But the man spotted Rose and immediately swept her across the floor. Rose was transfixed, but soon midnight came, and as the rest of the guests stopped, the man whispered in her ear, "Just one last dance, my Rose." With struggle, she resisted, but suddenly her feet were bewitched, and it seemed they began dancing without her. She couldn't control it. The man then kissed her, and the spark from their kiss set the house ablaze. The next morning, Rose was found mumbling around the ashes, now mysteriously an old woman, the devil having taken part of her soul. Some say he took her back to be his bride. Either way, the message is clear. There is a steep price for dancing with the devil.
Coming in at number 9 is The Devil. This one was shared by Reddit user BR Whoop, who said that grandma has completely banned Ouija boards from her house due to one incident that scarred her growing up. Honestly, if I was a grandma, I wouldn't need any incident to ban them from my house. I would just be like, that's not coming in here. I haven't got long to live. I'm not trying to get possessed or anything before I go. Now, when she was younger, her and her friends decided to mess with the Ouija board, and after asking who they were talking to, the planchette spelled out Satan. Now, usually demons and evil entities like that are very conniving and will manipulate the out of you before actually telling you who they are. In this instance, Satan literally wasn't even playing, he was direct and was like, "It is I, Satan." Now at that point, I would have been like that SpongeBob meme where it's like, I'ma head out. Nah, like that's not me. After the revelation, the friend whose board it was started convulsing and foaming at the mouth for 10 straight minutes before stopping.
Number 8.
Zozo.
Reason number 12,345 as to why Ouija boards might be a bad thing to whip out at a party.
Zozo.
I've never had a terrifying ghostly experience in my life, but everyone I've talked to who has used a Ouija board has regretted it. Zozo seems to be a name most people hear, and they have some creepy things to say. Legends of Zozo first appeared in 1816 as the name of a demon who possessed a girl in Picardy, France. Then in the 20th century, Zozo has appeared disguised most often as a friendly ghost, but get on their bad side and they will spout out nasty curses at you. Sometimes their curses end up injuring individuals in reality or bringing users close to deadly accidents. Whatever you hear, whatever they say, it is clear that whatever it is, its messages come from someplace no one wants to visit. How are you doing down there? Number 7. Sister Maria. On August 11, 1676, Sister Maria was found lying on the floor of her cell covered in ink with a note in her hand. The note was incomprehensible, covered in indistinguishable symbols and letters. Sister Maria said that the letter was written by the devil himself. He was trying to force her away from God. The letter fascinated researchers for centuries and some believe they have deciphered it. It appears to have been written in shorthand according to Ludum director Danielle Abate. She says, and I quote, "We speculated that Sister Maria created a new vocabulary using ancient alphabets that she may have known," unquote. By locating vowels and letters she used from different languages, they were able to decipher the message the devil sent her. The letter apparently describes the Holy Trinity as deadweights and says, and I quote, "God thinks he can free mortals, the system works for no one, perhaps now, Styx is certain," unquote. Abate says that the sister might have suffered from schizophrenia or bipolar, so that could be another explanation, but the research is yet to be published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, so we will have to wait a little longer for whatever truth is present. Number 6. I am Lucifer. After 60,000 exorcisms, Father Gabriel Amorth finally met the man of the hour. Before his death in 2016, Amorth was the official exorcist for the Diocese of Rome. But out of all the cases that came to him, this was the one that haunted him the most. A young man came to visit him in 1997 requesting the help of Christ. As soon as he was escorted into the room, he began to uncontrollably spit and curse in English, a language he wasn't known to speak. Drool dripped from his mouth and he stared down the father before he tried to attack him. With prayers, he held him at bay. He called out, "Unclean spirit, whoever you are, and all your companions who possess this servant of God, I command you, tell me your name, the day and the hour of your damnation," unquote. That's when things got scary. The man simply snarled, "I am Lucifer." Amorth said that the windows frosted up as he tried to remove the demon, and the man howled for 25 minutes straight and hovered 3 feet in the air. Number 5. Death Angel. Will Carroll is the drummer of the band Death Angel and was one of many who caught COVID this year. In no way did he have it easy, as he had a long, hard, relentless battle with the virus, including a near-death experience. While in a critical state at the hospital, Carroll was unconscious for 12 days straight, but little did anyone know he was far from sleeping. In an interview with San Francisco Chronicle, Carroll relayed the vicious nightmares he had. The star feature was the devil, punishing him for his sin of sloth. He would turn him into a bulbous creature and make him puke blood until his heart gave out. Then it would start again. Carroll has since recovered from the virus but took the message he received from the devil to heart. He needed to change his lifestyle habits or else. When he came out of it 12 days later, Carroll felt like he pulled a Dean Winchester and returned from hell. And if there's one thing he will make damn sure of is that he's never going back. Number 4. The Flying Canoe. This is another French-Canadian urban legend that involves another deal with the devil. In the version told today, French traders made a deal with the devil to make it so that their canoe could fly. The devil agreed, but of course nothing comes without a cost. The devil said that they had to return the canoe by dawn, and should they say God's name or touch any holy objects, their souls were his. The men agreed, but it was only a matter of time until the devil's old tricks came into play. On New Year's Eve it snowed so hard and the men missed their women, so they hopped into the canoe to see them. They drank and partied, but as dawn approached, the men found one of their own, drunk as a skunk, underneath a table. They bound him so he wouldn't utter a word of God mistakenly when he woke up, but unfortunately that's exactly what he did. He managed to loosen the gag and said, "Mon Dieu, why have you tied me up?" The canoe then took a nosedive and the men tumbled into darkness, never to be seen again. The message: a deal with the devil is always a fool's bargain. Number 3. The Breath of Satan. Malachi Martin released his vows as a Jesuit priest in the 1960s because, and I quote, he was prompted by his conclusion that many in the church, and particularly in his own order, the Jesuits, were more interested in power than in saving souls, but he still wanted to put his skills to good use. Martin, also known as the Kokari priest, went on to perform intense exorcisms, and according to him, quote, "Exorcism can be extremely violent. I have seen objects hurled around rooms by the powers of evil. I have smelt the breath of Satan and heard the demons' voices cold, scratchy, dead voices carrying messages of hatred. Martin is the main subject of the documentary Hostage to the Devil on Netflix and revolves around a spirit he confronted, a spirit that might have been the devil himself. Number 2. Michael Taylor. Whether it was disease that possessed Michael Taylor or an actual demon, he certainly delivered a message loud and clear, and it wasn't from anywhere good. Taylor was a simple butcher living in Ossett, England, who claimed to have been possessed by some dark entity. Everyone who knew him said he was very kind, but knew something was wrong. After a fight with his wife, he decided he needed to undergo a series of exorcisms. On October 5th to 6th in 1974, Taylor underwent an exorcism that took 24 hours, where apparently the priest cast out over 40 demons, but unfortunately there were 3 left and they were not good. Taylor went home with 3 demons who remained and viciously took the life of his wife. When they found him, he was covered in blood, standing in the street screaming in a voice far from his own, "It is the blood of Satan." What this message means on a larger scale we may never know, but one thing is for sure, it came from a place of pure evil. Number 1. Annelise Michelle. The case of Annelise Michelle was so terrifying that it inspired the exorcism of Emily Rose. The actual exorcism remains controversial, as it is very likely Annelise Michelle was suffering from a mental illness like schizophrenia, and doctors lacked the skills to treat her effectively at the time. And she did have a history of mental illness, but none of the medication that she was given was responsive for her. So many people believe that she was in fact possessed. The biggest examples are the tapes left behind during the exorcisms where a voice that didn't belong to Michelle dark disturbing messages. On top of that, she spurned religious objects specifically. 2 local priests performed 67 exorcisms, and 43 cassette tapes recorded outrageous things, including statements from Lucifer himself such as, quote, "I want to conquer the earth for myself. In the meantime, I make a rich booty. I am filling up my kingdom. I take whatever I can. I must convince you of this." And "I took Judas with me. He is always at my service. He is damned." And lastly, "The enemies of the church belong to us." Unquote. Either way, whatever you believe, she said these things with such conviction, it's hard to ignore the chill up your spine.